Hear ye, hear ye. You are now listening to another meeting of the Clubhouse with Mouse Jones podcast. And I am lucky. I'm one of those words. I'm surrounded by a lot of good writers right now, so my words might be off a little bit. Forgive me. Happy New Year to everyone. I want y'all to stop lying. I see a lot of new year, new me. You're still you. You're still you. And you just be the best you this year. This is the first time we're in the studio after the New Year break. So hopefully everybody got good Christmas gifts. Sometimes you don't get good Christmas gifts. Sometimes you just gotta grin and bear it. Sometimes you're smart enough to ask for a gift receipt. And and some people are just re-gifters. Either way, if you were able to smile through that, kudos to you. And shout out to all the relationships that survived this Christmas with bad gifts. I know it could be strenuous. Sometimes you're like, look what I got you. And then they be like, look what I got you. And you're like, you didn't get that from me. Shout out to those who knew to give gift cards. Those who knew to buy PlayStation points for their man. We got Rell in the studio. Rell, it's good to see you back in here, boy. I don't know what you're dressed like. I'm uncomfortable though. There's a lot of different fabrics going on. Uncomfortable. Your hat is strategically placed at the middle of your head, as if you had a hairline. Tabia is back in here. Tabia, I missed you so much. You kept it very conservative today. This is a lot of garment, a lot of garb. Mena's here. Jeans are getting skinnier, so that means he's still staying healthy. We like that. Mena's gonna stay with us for a very long time. Punch is in here. He's still being punched. So yeah. And that leads me to who I am surrounded by. I'm surrounded by two legends on either side of me. In this literature, writing words mean things game. First I want to introduce a woman who I have looked up to for at least the past 3 years. 2015 is when I started, it sounds weird saying started taking Twitter seriously, but like when I was like using Twitter for good, and I came across Jamilah Lemieux's episode on Combat Jack. Rest in peace, OG Reg. And I said, who is this woman?
You have two?
I did too.
You did too?
Yep.
So I remember both. The first one, it was the first one because the second one had the appearance by Mena.
I had my baby with me.
And I said, yo, who is this woman? She's mad smart. And I followed her on Twitter. And I think I said something. She cursed me out. And I was like, what are you cursing me out for? Answer the goddamn question.
I don't remember what it was. You were muted or blocked for a long time.
Hey, listen. Not all friendships and relationships start out the way they end. Okay,
that's true.
And you have come along. I've told you this.
Thank you.
Privately, and I think I've said it. If I haven't said it publicly before, I've watched you grow. Not just in terms of your work, but certainly let's affirm that, like your work and your come up comes obviously from working hard and getting good at your craft, but also just in terms of how you think about things that are going on in society and relationships and gender. I've seen the evolution, and it's been really nice to watch. So.
I'm glad, because if you're not growing, you're dying, and I didn't want to die.
That is true.
So there was that, and it feels good working. You know what I mean?
Working is good.
That other mindset wasn't really working, but I've always been honest. I've always stayed true to myself, so I had to show the world the growth. You know what I mean? Like if I grow, if I have a conversation that promotes growth, I want y'all to see it. I don't want everybody to just be like, oh, this motherfucker gets it. I don't. But yes, Jamilah Lemieux is here. I'm very excited because I've been trying to get her in the studio for a while. She always has an excuse. Today she didn't have an excuse, so yes.
You got me.
Got her. And then to my left, now this is very important. This podcast, this platform does a lot. For me, self-servingly, it gives me an opportunity to know that what I'm doing in my craft is worth being in the same room as some of my legends. Some of the legends I look up to. I've got to be in the studio with Rob Markman, Felonious Monk. Those are just two people that as a kid got me wanting to get into the industry. Then I come across the work of Touré. And I believe it was funny we were just talking about it off air. I believe it was a Rakim interview on Fuse. You might have been doing when I first seen you and was like, oh, now I like the way, what's going on over here?
Okay.
And then there was another interview that we'll talk about later, and I was like, I remember this guy from somewhere. I seen him. And then, for me, the talking head type of content, I just seen you pop up everywhere. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to do that. And I want to sound as articulate and as intelligent and well-informed. That is what I will always hang my hat on when it comes to looking up to you. Always well-informed about whatever topic. Like, it never looks like somebody had to edit that in or punch in and be like, oh, we got to punch this in and make them sound like, it always sounds like you're very well-informed. And obviously, your contemporaries respect you and us young guys respect you. And I appreciate what you've done. How old are you? I'm 29. I'll be 30 this year.
Okay.
So thank you, Touré, for your work, and thank you for being on the Clubhouse.
Thank you.
Now that I have introduced, did I introduce y'all? Because y'all been,
look, we're here.
Yeah, y'all been on a tour these past 2 days.
Jamilah,
How many interviews have you done?
I've only done a couple.
Behind this.
Yeah, I feel like I've only done 2 or 3. Like, it hasn't been that many. There have been things that, like, interviews that got scrapped because Trump did something.
Right.
There have been a few of those.
Right.
And I think the thing is, I mean, you also had the history, like, you did that interview. You know what I mean? Like, there were a number of Jamilahs.
I did 3, and I turned down 3 for various reasons. Yeah. But, I mean, I could feel the sort of cultural size of this in the Twitter response, in the email and text response, and from like the width and breadth of my sort of life. Like, here's my mom's friends,
right.
Here's my college friends, here's my tennis buddies, here's my daughter's kindergarten teacher reaching, like, wow, like everybody is watching this.
Well, let's not keep the people
wondering what it
anymore,
is. Yeah.
Right? So I'm happy, as everybody who listens to the show knows, and anybody who has ever heard me speak anything, I have a infatuation with R&B. Real R&B, real singing. Like,
you like R&B more than hip hop?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So I was introduced to hip hop. I was born in the R&B. You feel what I'm saying? I'm from New York, so growing up, my mom only listened to R&B or gospel. It was either or, and I was always in the car with her and my dad. 98.7 Kiss FM. Like, it's fun. It's to the point where, like, if I hear Fool's Paradise by Melissa Morgan, right? And I'm with my parents, I'll start doing Bugsy's voice because it's like, it reminds us of like Saturdays.
Being in the,
you know what I mean? So I've always been more attracted. It was a natural instinct to be R&B. Hip hop was when my dad was like, I think I was like either 7 or 8 when he introduced it to.
Because that's the center, that's the sun of my musical universe.
Yeah.
It's hip hop.
Right.
Watching it develop and the world exists around, and other things are out from that. And a lot of my own sort of musical knowledge comes from, oh, that sample was dope. I wonder what that was. Oh, and then I radiate out into that genre.
So I'm the exact opposite, right? So when I hear something, I'm like, oh, that's this. Oh, that's this. And I be putting people older, people younger. I'm like, yo, y'all didn't know about this. So for me to love R&B as much as I do, growing up, hearing the music of R. Kelly was just a normal thing, right? It was just normal. Like, there is no...
What was the first R. Kelly album you loved?
12 Play.
What was the song?
There was
that you were like, oh, that's my man.
Seems as terrible as it's gonna sound. Seems Like You're Ready, because what that was is that was the dawn.
That was mine.
That was the dawn of infomercials, right? So when I'm watching New York
Body and Soul infomercial,
right? So when I'm watching New York Undercover with my mom.
Right.
And then she falls asleep after 10 o'clock news, and I'm just up, just watching as much TV as I can before I can fall asleep.
Yeah.
The infomercial start. And then here comes Body and Soul. Yeah. And they're talking about, and every time they show that, I'm like, yo, that song is fire. And I'd be so excited when they played on the radio. Yeah. And so I'm like, oh, nah. And then I'll never forget stealing my mom's 12 play tape.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was playing it in the Teddy Ruxpin.
Back then.
Playing it in the Teddy Ruxpin. That was my that was my stereo. You couldn't tell me nothing.
That's so funny.
So I'm like, okay, boom. So you fast forward just a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm in high school now. Well, no, we could take it back to middle school because when the tape comes out, I'm in middle school.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a sweeper boy at my uncle's barbershop. And I come in and all the guys are huddled in the corner where everybody sells bootleg DVDs, T-shirts, do-rags. I'm like, what they watching over there? I don't want to watch it. Whatever they watching, it looked like the stuff you're supposed to watch by yourself.
Yeah.
It looked like a porn tape. I'm like, you don't watch that with other men. You watch that by yourself. That's weird. And so I just remember sweeping up, and I just remember the conversation from that day for probably the next 2 years. Oh, was that a girl on tape? Was that a 14-year-old on the tape? Was that a 14-year-old tape? And then you fast forward and...
I mean, look, I saw that tape.
If you ain't never seen a 14-year-old in your life.
I saw that tape. It was, I mean, it was clear that, wow, I don't know, maybe I'm biased because I got the tape knowing this
that it was a 14-year-old girl.
But it was definitely like, because there was, I think, like 6 or 8 different
there was a few different
of some of them. He's actually having sex with the women,
girls.
So, well, some of them I would think were women
too. I only remember.
No, I remember multiple women, like different sex scenes, and so I'm not even getting to the girl right at the end. I mean, she was clearly smaller physically than the rest, which is like wow. But like, no, there were multiple women. There was one woman, very full figured, was staring at the wall. So you saw her backside. And I think she had clothes on, but it was like super tight jeans type thing. But she was staring at the wall through the whole shot and making very clear to not show her face. And I remember it was like this whole rush of like, she knows that this is wrong, so she's hiding her face, but she still wants to be a part of it, so she's participating. So it was
that's a lot,
heavy.
Right? So as I'm growing up,
so there's multiple women, and then you get to the girl, and she stands out as like, wow, she's a lot smaller than everybody else.
Yeah.
So you could see like as I'm growing up, and the Chappelle show comes out, and you see the things on TV, you see the things on the news, right?
He's like always been a joke to you.
Exactly. So he goes from being, to me, this young kid who just loves hip hop. I mean, who loves R&B, and I'm like, oh, this is the guy, right? This is the guy. But then he starts looking a little funny in the light to me around 13, because that's when I start really getting into guy. And then that's when I start getting to Aaron Hall, and I'm like, wait a minute, Aaron Hall.
You realize that he literally stole his
you stole this nigga whole stick.
But had more to him.
Yeah, I mean, of course.
Because R was an attempt, at least sartorially, to mix hip hop and R&B, right?
Yeah, deliberately.
grab both at the same time. And that had been somewhat tried up until that point, but he was a real, like TLC, like a real attempt at like, can we get both and get a gigantic stack? That was off-putting to me, even though I loved some of the records. I mean, I think You Remind Me of Your Jeep was the first record that I was like, and not that I've loved a lot of his records, but like, I was like, I remember just walking down Broadway, listening to that on my Walkman, like, yo, this is
Wow. So to have that, and then like I said,
but that mixture, his attempt to mix those two was off-putting to me.
You know what? That's interesting. And I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't have been able, in the middle of both of you all in terms of age, and I would not. And I'm also from Chicago, so the first R. Kelly song I loved was "Honey Love," like from R. Kelly and Public Announcement, right? But like, that wasn't as jarring, as cheesy to me then as it was a couple years later. But it was still kind of weird because it was like, okay, like Belle Biv DeVoe with, like you had Ronnie and Mike rapping, like you had Albie Shore, Bobby Brown, like busting to a rap out of, or even Ralph Tresvant, like out of nowhere. It's like, okay, we really didn't need you to rap. Like you can be a singer or a rapper. You don't really have to be both. Like we can just get a rapper to do a feature. Please don't do this anymore. And he was like treated as this kind of like legitimate entity where like his adjacency to hip hop, like this kind of street R&B thing. And to me, that was a little corny. Like it was not like again, the songs that I liked were Honey Love and Seems Like You're Ready because they were true ballads. You know, they were slow songs. Like when he was doing the more like Summer Bunnies and the kind of like, yo, it's R. Kelly and the like, it just, that to me was kind of like, you're lame.
He doesn't I'm trying to think. He doesn't really try to rap.
Not trying to rap. I just mean like he had like a hip hop vibe.
But I mean like but there were so many people in that lane who did try to rap.
Yeah.
And like he would sometimes sing in a sort of staccato way, but he never tried to rap.
Well, now we know because that might have been a little bit harder for him to. That's different than trying to sing them out, you know, to like memorization.
You got to read those words.
Writing down the lyrics for a rap if you're not a rapper.
There's so many words involved.
So many words in rap.
Write them down.
But I mean, Jay-Z. Right, well, Jay-Z's a rapper. Think about it. Like when Bobby was rapping, somebody wrote that for him. You know what I mean? Like, so R. Kelly sings, he's writing those songs for himself. But like, if somebody had to come in and be the rapper, like, here's how you deliver this, that might have been a little bit more challenging.
That would be a lot. That would be a lot. If you can't read.
You can't read. It'd be like those. Have you heard like those Breakfast Club intros with like Mayweather or Webby? Like, have you heard them? Oh, I shouldn't laugh at them.
I remember hearing his brother on Wendy Williams when she had the afternoon.
Now before we get into that, right? Yeah, because if we're going from my timeline, Chappelle comes out. Now it's like that all the stuff that
completely makes a joke out of it.
Yeah, all the stuff we were taking seriously, and I'm watching people really be split down the middle with this.
Do you remember not to interrupt you? Do you remember the VH1 Behind the Music about him?
That might be the only one I don't remember.
Because that was seminal to me because in that Cheo Coker says R. Kelly used to come off stage and pass the full-figured women and girls waiting for him and pick the knobby-kneed braces, little pigtail thing at the end of the line who's all shy.
Right.
And that ran a lot. And I remember being like, why do they let that run all the time? I guess they just can't refute it. They can't argue against it. So they're not telling VH1, please stop running that. Because everything else in that fades away to me. That line and that they allowed that to be out in the public, that always blew me away.
So then, keeping on that, once Chappelle makes a joke out of it, and you're like, oh, well, maybe not that bad. Then the Boondocks, they don't make a joke out of it, but I think because it's animated, it's a lot easier for people to digest them for a minute and like, oh, this is all okay.
Yeah.
And then I start, as I'm getting older, the internet is literally growing with me. So I'm able to
Can we go back to the Boondocks real quick? And as an adult, I've come to be very critical of how like both, you know, and as someone who's a fan of Dave Chappelle and Aaron McGruder, how they made light of this situation. You know, it at the time it might have felt like, you know, you're taking shots at him, but like looking back at it, it's like, no, you're making light of this. But the Boondocks comic strip, which was much more serious in tone. I mean, it was hilarious. I always thought the strip. I loved the strip was much better to me than the show. The show kind of like the show went to some places that I didn't really expect. But when they dealt with R. Kelly in the strip, you know, it feels like accountability. It feels like somebody who's, you know, part of hip hop culture and who's young and cool, who's being like, this dude is a rapist and it's not funny. And, you know, and I'm going to point that out. And we get to the series, like the way that it was handled there, like the trial of R. Kelly, I appreciated that it definitely held Black women accountable, you know, for the ways that we have supported his career and, you know, and having Huey characters say, like, we know the nigga can sing. Didn't nobody say he can't make good music. We're talking about who this person is. But I thought that's interesting. And that's something that one thing I wish the documentary had done more of it is really kind of going into how those stories, and it was something I talked about a lot in my interview, like how those two episodes really made it easy to make, like the P thing becomes a joke. Even John Legend, when he says the P tape, it's like that's what people thought of it is, right? It's not child pornography, it's the P tape because it's this gross thing, and how much of our attention focused on the fact that he urinated on this girl as opposed to the fact that she was 14.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely get bogged down in that act of urination, which I think we're being very juvenile about it. The problem is doing something sexual with a 14-year-old girl. I'm sorry, if I'm the only one at this table, the only one watching, there's nothing wrong with peeing on another person who's consenting to that.
Right. Y'all can do what you want. Y'all are grown-ups. I don't care.
Fun and sexy to you for whatever reason.
Right. Shout out to Dubai.
Like
shout out to girls getting their pills made in Dubai.
There's nothing wrong with that, and that we fixate on the peeing and not the she was 14.
Right. Yeah.
That's the thing. But in the Black community, even this is not uncommon. I mean, I knew of this 50-year-old man who had a 20-year-old girlfriend in the hood.
Right. That's what I want to get into. Right, we're going to get into that. So the very next thing that we get into is I see the interview with you and him. I see the interview with you and him.
Where were you when the interview aired?
I was living. I mean, I was 14. No, I was 13 when that came out. I was 13.
What year is it? It's 2005?
No, it's 2008.
2008?
No, it's 8?
I believe it was 8.
Yeah.
No, then I'm in Virginia. I'm in, shout out to everybody at Capital Cuts. I'm cutting hair in Virginia, Capital Cuts, Virginia Beach Boulevard, right across from NSU. Norfolk. See your interview. And I'm like, oh, shit.
Were you at home?
No. We were in the barbershop.
You were at
the
literal barbershop.
We're in Capital
What was that? What was that like?
So we're watching it.
Good Lord.
And there's a bunch of college, because I was cutting hair at the one in Park Place, which is in Norfolk. And then I was like, nah, there's way more money by that college campus. I'm younger. I'm from New York. I could get way more money cutting hair over here. So I'm like, let me cut hair over there. I literally just started cutting hair over there, and all the college kids are in there. All the kids are in there. Everybody's watching this. And I seen everybody that was my age, a little older. I seen everybody, it clicked in our head for a minute like, no, wait, this ain't going nowhere. Like, this motherfucker has been on trial for pissing on little girls all the way from 01. And I started to see the conversation change, because now it literally became, I don't know what I'm considered, millennials or whatever. But
you're millennial.
Yeah, so it was the millennials.
We are millennials.
It was the millennials.
Too.
When were you born?
1984. Sorry. I told you I was in the middle. I didn't just get in. It's like starts like 80 or 81.
82.
So it keeps changing.
It does not keep changing.
I'm telling you. Like,
didn't read my Prince book.
I did read your Prince book.
We talk about
I absolutely read your Prince book, but I'm always going to go with the one that makes me look younger, Touré. Like, I'm sorry. It's in my best interest.
No, you're definitely a millennial.
You're
definitely a millennial. I'm just saying it just changed at 82. But fine.
But in that barbershop, I witnessed people my age begin to argue against the thought process of guys older than us, the 35 and up crowd, the 40-year-olds, the guys that right now are probably in their 50s, right? Because they didn't see no issue with it.
The older guys did.
They didn't.
The older guys didn't see an issue with him having sex with 14-year-old girls.
That was the first time I started to hear what we hear now, where was the parents? And that girl probably lied on him, and
that's
it's
what
always
the younger guys.
That's what the older guys.
But the younger guys were saying,
and we're
this is
saying,
wrong.
nah, this don't make sense. That's what they're saying.
But the younger guys are like, this is wrong.
Not so much that's wrong, but they're saying something doesn't make sense about this. This guy's not innocent. That's what everybody's saying.
Where were you?
I was at a friend's house. I was in New York, so I was about a year out of college. I was living out here.
You went to Howard, right?
I went to Howard, and I remember seeing the actual tape when I was a freshman with another girl from Chicago. We didn't watch it all the way through. We watched enough to confirm what we needed to know. Is this a 14? Is this a little girl? And it didn't take long to be like, oh my God, look at her body. Turn this off. This is so uncomfortable,
right.
But I remember I'll just never forget when we say teenage, how old we talking? And I'll say that even for how much, like I was done with R. Kelly in 2001. And like, I'm from Chicago. My older sisters went to the same high school as he did, but we're younger than him. Wow. They were class of 93, class of 95. I want to say he was class of 87, or would have been class of 87 if he finished, but he's still coming up there when they're in high school.
Yeah, I heard about that.
And it continues when I'm in high school. And he approached a couple of my girlfriends, allegedly, when we were in middle school. And I did not believe that. Now, when that happens and it's like 96, 97, and, I remember one person saying, like, R. Kelly tried to talk to so-and-so at Water Tower Place. And so-and-so didn't want to, you looked over at her and she was just sitting there like she didn't want to talk about it. Like she was uncomfortable. And she fit the profile. She was taller than those girls and a little bit lighter, but she was gawky. braces, awkward, you know. And I just feel like, why would R. Kelly want to talk to her? She ain't got nobody. She ain't got no, that don't make no sense. Right. And the other girl being like, no, for real. Like, and the other girl was kind of the hot girl, you know, and it was just like, no, he really tried to talk to her, you know, and the person he approached all through high school, like, she just was quiet on him. You know, people would be, you know, our album comes out, and she just like, you know, just discussed it. And her sister was at Kenwood with my sister, so I'm sure she'd heard those stories too. And so it's like, we knew about Aaliyah. I remember being uncomfortable with that. Like, this is weird. Like, this isn't weird to you guys, but not enough to not listen to it or to not to buy the album. Right. You know, I bought the double album when everyone's doing that with the R.
The R.
That was the last R. Kelly thing that I supported, you know, and then the tape happens, you know, and I'm like, this is okay? Like, this doesn't matter to you all? Like, that girl was a class behind me, you know, the primary girl from the tape, a year behind me in high school. And so I didn't know, I hadn't heard her name and stuff until more recently. But, you know, so-and-so knows her. And, you know, like, we're confirming again that this is a kid. And I'm just like, this is bad, you guys. Like, why does Chicago not care about this? Like, R. Kelly was the Grand Marshal of the Bud Billiken Day Parade, which is like, it's like our African American Day Parade. Okay. It's like, it's back to school parade. And I want to say he was the Grand Marshal in like 2009. You know, like, so we've been acquitted, but we've been acquitted because this, you know, young lady and her parents won't testify. Not acquitted because you didn't do it. You know, but like, we've just decided that it's all okay. Right. You know, like, you put out Step in the Name of Love. Like, Chicago Steppers had a lot to do with like helping to have him be embraced. Like, we forgave. Yes. You know, if you can even call it forgiveness, because we acted as if there was nothing to
forgive him for.
Nothing to forgive. Right. You know, and so if the people at home and closest to you are like, oh, it's good, you know, it was lonely being a Chicagoan who didn't fuck with R. Kelly. Even at Howard, you know, like, Ignition came out when I was in college. That was a huge song. You know, it was an organization I was in that had like a little song we sang to it. And I remember thinking like, I've won some, you know, because I was the righteous one, you know, with the cowrie shells and the afro and all that stuff. And I was very cliche in a lot of ways. So I was always arguing against things that were misogynistic or bad for the community. And I remember feeling like Ignition was the war I couldn't win. You know, and the other day somebody being like, we need to come up with a new song. Right. I'm like, we've been out of school for how many years? But we need to come back and have a new song, because we really ran around singing Ignition like it was okay. And I hated that. But I still, you know, again, it was just very lonely, like trying to beat I have friends who we've only said the words R. Kelly to each other recently because we just had to agree to disagree, because they were like, well, I'm still gonna go hear his music. I'm like, he's raping black girls. He raped girls our age. What are you talking about? Like, how do you not, like, the songs are about sex. Right. The songs are about sex. He's having sex with young girls. Like, when you hear him, how do you disassociate? Like, it's Fucking You Tonight was one that I held on to for. I'll tell you the ones that I held on to. Fucking You Tonight and Seems Like You're Ready. And Seems Like You're Ready, I let go some years ago, but it was still kind of like, damn, I love that song. It's such a beautiful song. But I was like, I'm not spending money on it.
I couldn't shake for a long time. That was the one. That rhythm is just kills.
And that might be the only song that the remix came out first.
Well, remember the New York store? Was it the New Yorker? Remember he did like New Yorker and GQ back to back, or was it New York? Maybe it was New York Mag. They were both really written profiles of him that allowed him the rope to hang himself. Like,
one thing is interesting to me as you know, with hip hop as the center of my universe, and so for a long time, you know, Jay-Z has been, you know, the thing against which all else is compared. And, you know, at a period when Jay was like, I never lose, and it's like, damn, you kind of don't. Like, you could work with any producer, you could do with any other person. And then he does an album with R. Kelly. And as a fan, I was like, that album's whack.
That album was so whack.
And I was like, wow, like, y'all couldn't make a dope album together. That's weird. But I never fully believed that R&B and hip hop could just...
That wasn't Jay's fault. It wasn't Jay's fault.
Well, here's the thing.
He delivered
all his parts.
Here's the thing, too. It's not just that the album was whack. It's that Jay's boys basically beat R. Kelly up at the Garden, and that ended their relationship.
Well, he's the only person.
And I was like,
shout out to Ty, allegedly.
Right.
Shout out to Ty, standing up for the community.
Allegedly being the only person.
Ty's the only person that ever stood up to the monster.
That kind of absolved Jay from the bad choice and the whole mistake of that for me. That like we're not just like pretending it didn't happen because Jay is good for pretending.
Remember, this is on the second album. We've done this twice. There's two Best of Both Worlds. God. Two. I can't believe the second one. It was like the Chris Rock joke. It's like finding another dead white woman at OJ's house. Like, really?
Well, the second one. The second one is. The second one is all old. They're all the songs were recorded at the same time.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, that was the other thing. It was so obvious that these were like throwaway tracks. Like, we've got some more stuff. Maybe we can make a little bit more money if we go back on the road with the same thing that didn't work the first time.
But I want to ask you, Touré, especially after you saying that, hip hop is your thing. They come to you with this R. Kelly interview. What's going through your mind?
I mean, I had been covering the R. Kelly story closely for a long time because I was at MTV News when we started to say, did R. Kelly marry Aaliyah? I keep hearing that rumor that we are news people. We don't just hear rumors. We figure it out. And my editor told me, my producer told me, call the Cook County records office and see if there's a marriage certificate. And it was the quickest and most delightful interaction with a bureaucracy I have ever had in America, because she was very lovely and very quickly was like, absolutely, here you go, no problem. And like, we had this marriage certificate and we put that out. And so just knowing the story and following it for years of like, well, this is never going to actually come to try. And then it does. And
when you put that out, when you put that out, what is the goal behind it? Because I feel like that is when
marriage certificate.
Yes, because I feel like that's when, and I mean, that could just be my me just having super hope in humanity, right? And feeling like there was a time where news was really news, and like would this being put out to say to out him and
no to tell the truth. You don't
just to tell the truth.
You don't do the news to make a point, right? That's what Fox does, right?
Okay.
They're picking and choosing different stories, exaggerating certain things, de-emphasizing certain things for a particular narrative. That's being a hack. That's not what I'm doing.
Or advocacy journalism. I mean, I think there's sometimes it's like, we're telling this story because you need to. Like, I mean, even think about what Rachel Maddow does. It's like, yes, I'm telling the truth, and it's not coming from a place where I'm biased, I'm a leftist, I have this agenda, but it's also still rooted in like, what's going on right now in the country is very bad and you must know it.
I mean, I can want you to know something without, I mean, like, look, we don't approach this story to say we want to take down R. Kelly or we want to hurt R. Kelly. We want to tell the truth. Are they married or not?
Okay.
We heard people are saying they are. We want to know what's really good. But
now it's out.
I was just part of that, and I was following it. So when it came time to do the BET thing, I felt like he had that. I felt clear that there was a major problem here.
Okay,
and I could get him to talk about it in a way that would be. That would expose the truth.
Right.
I'm not going to stand there and go, you raped that woman. Can I just get you to talk about it? And we'll see what's really good. And we had to submit our questions, and I would normally never do that, but I had to. It was the price of admission.
Yeah, of course.
We could not mention Aaliyah at all. That was a condition from the beginning.
Right.
There were several other conditions I cannot exactly remember, but I definitely remember feeling like I'm in a bit of a straitjacket here, but we're going to do our best. He was very nervous before we started. I remember we were in a Philadelphia hotel room, like big sort of suite, and he was visibly shaking with his leg when we met to start. Right? Very smiley, like when you're nervous. Wow. He was definitely evasive and combative from the beginning. I had asked him before, do you like underage girls? Right? Underage. Mm-hmm. And he kept defining that as like 13 and younger. And that's ridiculous. Yeah. No, I don't like small children. And I'm like, you're evading because really the issue is 14, 15, maybe 16. Mm-hmm. So you're being evasive right now. Right. So in the big moment that you see, I asked him, do you like underage girls? And his crisis manager came running in and said, no, you can't ask him that. And he said, no, I want to answer this.
Yeah. Right.
So then the guy went and sat down. And I asked him again, but this time I said, do you like teenage girls? Because I figured teenage is not vague. Right. That is sharp and clear. Underage was he was. You
would hope so.
Right.
He was applying vagueness to that. Teenage, you can't.
Right.
So his non-answer spoke volumes, and that was the first of a 3-part question that I was going to ask him.
Right.
And I don't even remember the other 2 because he fell flat on his face on the first one. It was like, you're killing me, money. You just admitted it.
I just remember the room just erupting when we got when we say teenage, how old we talking? Everybody like, oh, nigga, what?
I remember all the people my age. We were like, yo, and I remember all the older guys were like, well, let him answer the question.
Right.
Because there's a difference. Right. And I'm like,
he's talking about 18, 19.
So
at this point, 18, 19 was very young for him because he's how old at this point?
He was late 30. I think he was 37. I think he was 37. I think he was 37. Yeah, and I remember feeling like at 35, 36, 37, how do you talk to an 18, 19-year-old girl outside of an academic or family context when there's already a direction? We're in a family context. We have all this family in common. Right. So we have, bam, okay, I can do that. I can talk to students because we have a reason why we're talking.
We're here for a reason.
But just a general, what are we supposed to talk about? Like, you know nothing that I think about. I know nothing that you care about.
There's no relation.
I'm a 34-year-old woman, and like having a conversation with an 18 or 19-year-old girl, like we can, bond over, maybe we like the same shade of lipstick. We both think Michael B. Jordan is hot. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not that we don't have nothing in common. Maybe we're even both mothers, but like the level of conversation that we would have, it's just not that of anything resembling a peer. Like, this could not be my homegirl. It'd be weird if I showed up with 19-year-old homegirls at 34 years old.
Absolutely.
This is the reason why there's almost no 40-year-old pop stars. Because the predominant audience buying music is 15 to 25.
Your fans are aging out.
When you get to be 40, how do you speak to those people? You aren't on the same planet.
You got to do something else.
So once we get to that, right? Once we get to that, my biggest question is, because I must admit, I am one of those guys that I like vehemently speak out against. I am someone who did not begin to realize, it's ugly to say, I did not begin to realize Black women as more than an accessory until I became a father. Now, the key to that, the spin on that, where it's a little different, is I became a father at 17. I was responsible for a life at 17 years old. And then her life, and then I've had full custody of her since she was 3 years old. Wow. So right there, my whole outlook on life is different. It's protect this girl, make sure she's able to live in a world that does not beat down on her. And I don't ever want to see any old niggas around her. I'll kill somebody for playing with me like that. Then I have another one at 22. I have 2 daughters, right? And now I'm looking like, damn, Mom, like, you raised a son and have a husband and raised other kids. And so now I'm saying that unfortunately, that is what it took for me. Yeah. I was 17 though. It's sad to see 40-plus-year-olds only beginning to see Black women as more than an accessory because they had a daughter.
My daughter's 9. I haven't gotten any of that from having a daughter. I have gotten that from my female friends, and Dream being one of them, and for a very long time. And I remember something she said when her daughter was around 11 years old. And she was talking about how fast men in a community start to talk to girls.
Exactly.
Who were like 13 and 12 and 11.
Exactly.
And I didn't know anything about that because, my sister didn't get that in the thing we grew up in. And, and Dream pointing that out to me and how that had happened to her, that sexualization happened to her at a very young, and not even necessarily to go to the level of R. Kelly happening to you, but just being a 12 or 13-year-old girl and walking down the street and men are catcalling, talking to you, trying to pick you up. Yes. And that's crazy.
It's like one day it just happened so quickly, you know, and I feel like I remember it happening at 12. You know, so like I'm 11, I'm still, maybe at 11, right? Because I think of the summer that I turned 12 and that kind of had my like first little pretend, or maybe my second year having like a little halfway summer job or whatever. And, you know, maybe moving around by myself a little bit more than I had, you know. So like, of course, they weren't saying things when I was around my parents. And I also know that because a lot of people in my neighborhood knew my father, right. You know, that gave me some level of protection, that people were only going to, you know, certain guys were only going to go but so far. Right. But like, it's just like one day Barbie dolls and baby dolls, and maybe I'm still kind of playing with these things, and then I go from being a little girl to men because people treated me as a little girl, you know, like if a man, you know, might tell my mom that I was gone, she's so cute, a little pigtail, you know, and then one day they're looking at my legs, or they're flirting with me, or my mom's not here, and now they're, you know, they're saying these things. I worked at a couple of restaurants when I was in high school, and I remember once I was only there, the one I really liked working at, because there was like cute guys who worked there, and it was fun, and you know, all the teenagers in the neighborhood went there, and like, but I left that job at like 16 at the oldest, maybe 15, maybe I was 15, and I just remember one day coming to work and like, the waiters outside, and I answered phones. I was too young to wait tables. Right. And so even if you didn't know exactly how old I was not old enough to serve alcohol. So, you know, you know, I'm a kid. And like, cause I think they let 18-year-olds serve, even though they couldn't drink. I was not 18. And just walking to work, you know, and the guys, you know, the waiters are outside having a smoke break. And one of them saying like, oh, give it up for the most beautiful woman in Hyde Park. And Hyde Park was my neighborhood. And, you know, I felt uncomfortable and just kind of like, oh, you know, they're all looking at me. Oh, hi, guys, you know. But it's just still like, these are not all young college dudes or, you know, men that were even like, you know, 4 or 5 years old. Or some of them were like 30s, 40s. But I'm just like, you know how old I am. You see my parents come pick me up from work. You know, I can walk to work by myself, but if I'm getting off after 9 or 10 o'clock, somebody's coming to get me. You know I'm a kid. And it just, one day that was just the case.
So how did we let this happen? When I say we, I mean the community. How did we let the R. Kelly thing get this big?
I think.
And I'm asking you guys because obviously everyone... I mean, seeing you guys on the Surviving R. Kelly documentary, the 6-part series.
There's so many factors. I think there's one, you know, and this was touched upon in the documentary, that for years just rock and roll and musicians and entertainers, period, having these relationships with very young girls, which is something that happened, you know, and I've had this argument with someone recently who was actually defending R. Kelly, saying like, well, your grandparents and your great-grandparents, I'm like, because their life expectancy was what? Right. You know, like, a lot of us had like a 17-year-old grandmother and a 24-year-old grandfather that got together when he got back from the war, but like they weren't anticipating living to be in their 80s or 90s. Right. You know, things were different. And we didn't, and people smoked cigarettes and had cocktails with breakfast on Bewitched, you know, like the world has changed. We were also slaves. Like let's not talk about what we used to do. I assure you, you're gonna find a lot of shit you don't like. Right. There's a lot. That's the tear. That's
the time machine comes. There is no time in the past that I want to go to.
Like I'm not going past like 2008. You know, like, please. And so
I'll check the tunnel out. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'll check the tunnel out. If there was a time machine, I'll check the tunnel out.
Y'all got to go to some party. The tunnel. Like we didn't get to go to the tunnel.
I ain't get to go to no tunnel.
We didn't get to go to like New York parties.
Wait,
when, like,
what? You want to go back to the 90s and go to the tunnel?
Yes.
For a few days. Like I wouldn't say
I'm a dirty nigga from New York. Yes.
Nigga, I was in the tunnel. Ain't nothing special to go back to.
Said someone who made it out
right. And maybe if I said, well, I want to go to Studio 54, maybe somebody would say, no, that ain't nothing. Maybe. But I mean, like,
I don't know. Weezy's mom.
That shit was like a gigantic meat locker of people, and it would be like squished as hell.
But I remember,
as
like,
you're like sliding.
The tunnel story in Vibe.
Yes.
Do you remember who wrote the tunnel story for Vibe? I can't remember.
I don't even remember that one.
I remember them talking about a girl in a wheelchair, and like everyone had picked up, like dudes had picked up the wheelchair and threw it in the air, and she was like, she's having fun.
She was having the greatest time of her life.
It just sounded so like. That's why I ended up moving here.
I did a story.
Like, here I come.
I did a story. I did a story in '96 on Flex was pushing this no drinks in '96 movement. Do you remember that?
Hold on.
Sounds familiar.
I would have only. Make sure you get that timestamp. Gotta bleep that name out.
Uh-oh.
Oh, I'm.
You're fine. You're fine. You speak freely.
Well, the story won't matter if you bleep the name. But I mean, But it was this whole thing, and I think it was centered around the tunnel of like, don't buy drinks for girls, make them buy for us or buy for yourself. Typical hip hop boy misogyny crap. I mean, like, really, it was a great club for the time. I don't want Jessica to call me all mad. It was a great club.
Jessica, come on the podcast, Jessica. I want to talk about the tunnel.
But I mean,
we're bringing it back for my 30th birthday party.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe to go back and be part of the nation in the 60s and see what Malcolm was like, or to see what it was like with King and them, or the Panthers and them, and like, I'm gonna join the fight and be in there with Bobby and Huey and them. But I mean, like,
as long as I get to come back, like, these are yeah. There's no. That's what I'm saying. If I'm starting over, I'm like not going back for. If it's like you have to stay there, I'm like, okay, maybe 2008. That's about it.
Right.
Yeah, you're not gonna take my. Nah, I just got iOS 12. Y'all not taking that from me. Y'all not taking that from me. Woo! Have to redo all this phone shit again.
How can I live without live motion photographs?
No Twitter. No, son.
I said 2008.
No Twitter.
Yo, back in my day on Instagram, it was all photographs, and we liked it that way.
No, hell
no. None of this television on your phone.
No IGTV.
I still haven't gotten to IGTV. It's intimidating.
It's fake lit.
Yo, I haven't either, but I swear, like, because I'm living my friends having a baby, right? They live in Jersey, but I see the baby every day on the stories. We didn't have that. We were Instagramming one photograph of the baby a day. Now we're getting little movies about her baby constantly. Oh my God,
it's content. But I'll ask you the same question I asked Jamilah. How did we let this happen?
I mean, look, who are the victims?
Right.
Do we typically show a great concern as a society for young Black women?
Right.
No. Do we typically and young Black women, some young Black women's support for his oppression is used against them?
Absolutely.
Right?
Explain that, because I got it.
The young Black women who are like, they just trying to ruin a Black man, you know, blah, blah, blah. Like, I love him still. I mean, like, the girls who were like, Chris Brown could beat me up. Like, you know, and it makes it, and it allows others to say, oh, like, you know, we don't have to ride for that community because they don't care themselves.
Especially if you're looking for an excuse. That's why, you know, when Trump has his African-American singular, you know, like my African-American said this was a good idea.
You know, I mean, I think Nelson George makes a powerful point in Dream's piece when he notes that R. Kelly in particular, as a musician, was able to work his way into our institutions, right? He's part of your wedding, your reunion, your church on Sunday.
Do you think that is at all
but also
purpose or done on purpose?
No, I don't think he's thinking that great. I think that he is that level of musician.
Okay.
And because he's a true R&B man, he's coming from a gospel tradition, and he can whip out that high level of gospel or, you know, close to gospel whenever bravado he wants. But also, I feel like the three major points of the story happen at different times, almost to different generations. The Aaliyah thing creates a certain fire. The trial that wasn't into the trial that he gets away from with the sort of interview with me is the second chapter. And the third chapter being our growing knowledge of the sex cult.
Right.
But they happen in like 3 different decades to where most people aren't really making connections, not hitting you viscerally. Part of what Dream has done brilliantly is bring all the stories together, which hits you like, wow. And you see guys on the block talking about, yo, it's a system with this dude. And like, when you realize that,
that's
like,
what I've been hearing.
He's
that's what I've been hearing.
It's not like he knocked off one person. He had a system in place with other people, like some Harvey Weinstein shit.
This is sex trafficking. Sex trafficking does not just involve, you know, somebody selling. These girls are being bought and sold, but not in the same way where, you know, we have an ad on Backpage and you pay a couple $100 an hour and I bring you somebody reality, right? Like that these girls are getting on airplanes, you know, and are checking into hotels and are not spending time with their families and are being isolated away from their parents and, you know, at times kind of giving their families prepared. Oh, it's fine. Everything is fine. I'm having a good time. You know, like there's a lot of people. I mean, even when you go back to Demetrius, you know, the third tier villain in the film behind Robert and Bruce, talking about the wedding, you know, and how he helped get the marriage certificate, you know, and so like you can't do this by yourself. If he were operating, and this is why he sheds people, you know, there are people that are around for a long time, and then there are people that are in and out because there are folks that are like, I see this and I can't stick around much longer, you know, and there are other people that stuck around for a very long time. But either way, like,
how culpable are those people? The ones that to walk away.
Anyone who
let's stay with R. Kelly. R. Kelly did these things.
No, sure, but they were facilitated.
I think there's levels of culpability, right? Like I think that
because I think overarching theme is
when I interviewed him, I knew that his brother and his
which brother, the Casey, Bruce Casey. The one that called in the Wendy?
Had to be Casey.
Casey was the one who worked with him.
Okay.
Yes, Casey and his uncle were both publicly pointing a finger at him on this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. The phrase that I had used was area of concern because we couldn't just say the phrases of, you know, you committed sexual assault. Like I couldn't say that.
Yeah.
So I remember saying to him, your brother and so there were family members who were saying, hello, pay attention to this.
Casey did Wendy Williams.
Yes, I remember. I remember that call.
Yeah, I remember like it almost becomes like, wow, why didn't the Bill Cosby women say something earlier? Why did it take Hannibal Buress? Well, they had been saying stuff all along.
That's the only way Hannibal Buress could know is that
we had not been listening to them.
Right.
And I just, again, I think about Aaliyah and Age Ain't But a Number a lot. And I think you really, in the film, Touré, when you said, people kind of looked at it like, okay, that's weird, but okay, you know, but it's just, I think about like, I want to get somebody who knows Photoshop to do this for me. Put a man in the foreground or in the background of Britney Spears' One More Time, the album cover. You know, like shop a man like looking at her lustfully.
It changes.
Put a man on the cover of Christina Aguilera, Ariana Grande's debut album, just sitting there looking at her like, I'm gonna fuck this girl. And who would have been okay with that?
Nobody.
Because on Age Ain't Nothing But a Number is literally a tribute to this relationship. He's on the album cover, and even if he weren't, you know, like imagine Britney Spears and I forget the guy who was the Svengali for some of those boy bands. I mean, I think his interest was not girls.
Was it Lou Pearlman?
Lou Pearlman.
But so maybe not Lou Pearlman, but put someone young, like if one of the guys from New Kids on the Block was like
Jordan Knight.
Say Jordan Knight's like, now I'm gonna be a music producer and I've got an artist.
Okay, you can still name one of the members of New Kids off the top of the dome.
I
give you at least
every single one of them.
I give you at least 3.
You know what I go back to? R. Kelly and Aaliyah, and I want you to call this up if you can, did an interview on BET. I think it was with Les.
Big Les.
Yeah. And they covered it on in a documentary.
Right. But they didn't play it because when they come out, he says something. He says, I got my something. I said my young strap, my YG. I got my YG. And they were kind of like, what is that? And they let it go. And you could say that he means his young girl, but he had some deniability. No, I was talking about something else. But like, well, he just came out and said, I have my young girlfriend.
I mean,
well, no, YG, YG is slang, especially in gang culture. That's my young gangster. That's my young gunner.
Yeah.
So he could have been, but
she was literally underage.
I'm 100% with you. 100% with you.
Well, my thing is, if he'd come out and said, I have my play cousin with me, they're wearing matching outfits.
Right.
I tell you, there's one man on this planet, maybe 2 if you count my father, who can match outfits with my daughter, and that's her dad. One grown and her grandfather. Nobody else is putting on matching outfits to sit next to my child. And we're like, we're from Chicago. That matching outfit shit is a thing. You go to Great America, not as much, but that was literally a thing. Like, you would put on matching outfits and matching sneakers, and you would go to the mall, you go to the movies, you and your boo. You see, like, some of the 40, 50 something still doing it, looking super cheesy. Like, it was country, but that was just part of the culture. Like, me and my boo in our matching outfits. Like, and she's a Midwest girl too. So when I saw that, I was like, I know exactly what the hell this means.
Right.
So how do we? So
do you wear matching outfits with your female friends? Like, just us, my little homegirl. Let's just wear matching outfits. We're BFFs.
If I come outside and my homegirl got the same sneakers on as me, I'm going inside. I'm going inside. Like, nah, bro.
I don't want.
We whole adults.
I don't want to dress exactly like you.
That's what I'm saying.
It was maddening. It's just like, people say he was hiding in plain sight. It's like he was hiding in plain sight because no one was looking for it. No one was looking at it.
No one's
like,
looking.
People did not care.
So I have this. I've had this theory. And I don't know. And me even coming up with this theory makes me a little uncomfortable because I don't know if I'm in the right too, because I'm not a man. I'm not a woman. But I have this theory about why, at least the women fans have gone so hard, because me and you, we met at the Black Panther premiere, but then we ran into each other again via online when one of my show at BET, I'll Apologize Later. I remember the second episode had came out. We were to record the second episode, and it was right after R. Kelly had released that Facebook video where he's toasting, and he's like, if they wanted me to, and I remember just getting upset, and I'm like, you know what? Don't even worry about it. I got a show. Somebody's gonna hear this shit.
Yeah,
I got a show, and I remember going into the studio. I didn't tell anybody because shout out to BET, but they will tell you, hey, ease up on that. But I know once we get in front of cameras, I'm only giving you but so much. You have to use this shit. So I remember looking at my DP, Kev Spence. I said, just turn the camera on. I got something for you. He was like, all right. So the camera goes on, and that's when I look at the camera. I'm like, fuck R. Kelly. I'm saying, fuck R. Kelly. This is disgusting. This has been going on far too long. Ain't nobody said nothing about it. I'm coming at you. And I remember the minute that video hit, before anything, before the mute R. Kelly people started DMing me, before all the people thanked me for that, I remember women. I remember so many older it was so many Cocoa Butter Kisses, 2465. So many of them was in my messages. Like, how could you letting them use you to tear down a fellow black man? Yeah. And I said, what? And I said to myself, I said, you are an old black woman, right? And so I started working through my head. I said, what the fuck? There has to be more.
I have a theory. I want to
hear your theory.
So I'm saying to myself, as I'm working through this, I'm like, there has to be more to this than you just wanting to wear your open-toe white shoes somewhere. It has to be more to this than you wanting to gel down those baby hairs with that Indian hemp and have a night on the town. It has to be more, right? And I start thinking about it. I start thinking about my mother. And I start thinking about the stories she told me about, growing up in a house with all her cousins and her cousin's boyfriend trying to come on to her. And nobody saying nothing. Her cousin's boyfriend tried my mother. Like, not just, oh, you cute. Like, he tried my mother. And ain't nobody do nothing. Ain't nobody kill him. Ain't nobody bust his motherfucking head to the white meat. They went on, right? And so that starts getting me thinking. I'm like, okay. And I said, that's why. That's why these women don't say nothing. And that's why these women are so... That's why they want these new girls to shut up about it, because they've had a Uncle Robert. They've had an Uncle Joe.
I'm surprised that he's run through so many girls long. I'm surprised that there hasn't been one guy who's been like, nah.
Like, you
and just I'm gonna get a gun. I don't care.
So watch this.
I don't care.
So
you know what I mean?
Shout out to my guy.
Like, and I mean, like, I know he's picking women who are
no, that's not
vulnerable.
That's not even true.
But
there's men with fathers. Even down
because you have a dad does not mean that.
No. I'm talking about the girl.
About their life.
The girl,
of course. But I'm just saying, just on the odds of, like, you screw around with.
There's so many that nobody
over 30 years, and there's gonna be one dad or one uncle, or I actually raised her. You thought I wasn't around, like, no, I don't care.
My father would have
But now here goes the weird part about this.
Your father.
My father and my child's father, R. Kelly, would be dead. I say that with no hesitation. Both of them would kill him without blinking.
It would be terrible. It would be a terrible day.
And you can't tell me that he is bodyguarded up so good that all the fathers of America who are angry with him are not like, oh, hell no.
A lot of dads took money.
And you know, it doesn't even need to be.
Touré, say that one more time.
A lot of dads took money,
but it doesn't even need to be at yes. But it doesn't even need to be all the way.
Right.
Like, it could be somebody like, he just talked to my daughter and I'm mad. Right. So she wouldn't even make the list or get a check. But he's just flipped out and like, oh, hell no.
Or even launching a campaign against him. Like, because let's just say you're not the dad who's going to get a gun or who's going to beat him up, hand to hand. Like, somebody being like, I'm outside the studio with a sign. I got posters on, like that hasn't happened with more parents. Doesn't that? Just for all the stories I've heard about girls.
I leaned on that, right? I was just like, yo, you just gotta be, and I even said it in my ignorance, I even said it probably like the first day of the documentary. I remember saying, I not even blaming men. I'm just saying, I just said to all men, just be present in the young girls in our lives. Just be present in their lives, whether you're uncle, godfather, brother, whatever you are, just be present in their lives, right? Then I keep watching the movie, and I'm watching this girl as Rell's story, and her two parents. Now, I'm not gonna say how, but I know her father's pedigree. That's a real nigga. That's a real Baltimore nigga. And even he can't stop what happened. And my friend Vox said it on Twitter.
He can't. Did he try? Are you saying
you can't get to him if he can't even get to his own daughter? He can't get to
because Azriel encounters him when she's 17, and so it doesn't take long before she turns 18, and now they can't.
You see what I'm saying?
They can't force.
I mean, R. Kelly's got to go to a public event at some point. He could keep the woman hidden away for as long as he wants, but he got to do an in-store, a concert.
Yeah. You're not doing a show anyway. I'm showing up. I'm showing up every single one. Not just
I want to hear your theory about and your explanation of why so many sisters continue to ride for him.
I think you touched on it. When you talk about what were the experiences that they had growing up, and I think about my own mother and times where my parents have both become more feminist because of me. And just me talking to them about these things. And they were both Black. My dad was a Black Panther. My mom was active with SNCC. So they had, they were serious about things. It's not like we just go to work and just try to survive this white man's world. Right. It's like, no, but they weren't feminists, right? Like to them, they were part of that group that saw feminism as a white woman's game largely.
So they were anti-feminist.
I wouldn't say full out anti-feminist. I say somewhere in the middle. Like there are people that are hardcore, like we don't do that shit. And there were people from the movement that were kind of like live and let live. Like, yeah, some of that was cool, but we had bigger concerns. And my mom's attitude was always kind of like, we were doing, the things they were talking about, like women getting jobs, we had to work. Like just equal pay. We can't even just some of it to them just seemed, I think, a little bit too pie in the sky, and the focus on sexuality to them, it's like you all are fighting to have more sex and maybe we're fighting to have less. And I remember thinking that for a long time, kind of like, that's so regressive. Black women, I want us to be more sexually free and more sexually open. But my mom, I am from a large family, but you wouldn't think it. My mom is the oldest of 9. My dad's only child, single mom. My mom's the oldest of 9. Parents were married until they died. But I didn't spend much time with them growing up for 2 reasons. One, half her siblings became Jehovah's Witnesses.
Okay.
And also, I'll say I spent time with them when she was around. I didn't do sleepover. There were just so many things I did not do, right? Just the way that people were around these large clans of people or, can I go over so-and-so's house? She has a brother. She has an uncle. She has no. And now I realize it's that, and to this day, I don't know exactly what the experience or experiences were, but I know that there were some family things with a cousin or uncle or someone who did some things that were not okay, that made her, and perhaps her sisters feel uncomfortable. There was a reason why even family was not to be trusted in terms of just leaving your baby around them a lot, And when when my mom and I would argue because maybe I'd curse out an old man on the street for doing some street harassment shit, and she'd be like, "That's an old man." I'm like, "But I'm a
young girl.
You don't get to talk to me like that, And by the time when I went off to college and I came back thinking I'm a woman, I'm 18, so I'm gonna curse in front of my mom, just And she's like, "Don't say that." I'm like, "No, he disrespected me. Why are you okay with this?"
Right.
And I just realized that Black women's experiences in the United States from day one have largely centered around rape, and not having autonomy over our bodies. We were brought here to be raped, and yes, most of the Black women who are raped at this point are raped by Black men the same way that most of the white women who are raped by white men. You're raped by people around you. But for us, rape culture means that men are taught that they have a certain level of entitlement to women's lives, that they don't actually deserve or have earned. But for us specifically, it's like the world does not value us in the way that women are supposed to be valued from this, puritanical standard of what womanhood is and what masculinity is. So we're not valued in that way. Our men have been taught to devalue us, and so even those that do feel that they are practicing, some semblance of racial loyalty and I got to look out for the sisters and I got to, treat women a certain way are still capable of doing some of these things because that's the nature of patriarchy. And then, and so for women, I think a lot of us have come to just Black women accept that, like not recognizing it, not naming it, but just kind of like, this is the way things are. So my job is survival, right? So I'm not going to let anybody be around my kids. There's a woman who gets in a relationship and just lets any man be around her children. And then there's a woman who never repartners because the risk of having a man around her kids is too great.
So you're saying the reason why a lot of sisters continue to support him is...
So, yeah, no, I'm taking a long way to get there. So not only are we socialized to, like, believe that, it also, to recognize a lot of those girls being abused, I think for certain women would mean to recognize and own their own abuse. That your 22-year-old boyfriend that you had when you were 15 was your rapist. But in my mind, he's my ex-boyfriend, and whether he was a good ex-boyfriend or a bad ex-boyfriend, I made the decision to have that relationship. I made the decision to have sex. I made the decision to leave school and hang out with him. So like a lot of us would have to go back and own up to things that happened to us that should not have happened. Like I don't think, and then things that are allowed that have become culturally permissive because we have this attitude about Black women, and that we've always, like, Black women or Black boys and girls are treated as if they're older. Like a 13-year-old Black man robs the gas station, right?
Yeah. And a 19-year-old white boy.
19-year-old, right? It's a 35-year-old white boy. He's just a kid, and a 13-year-old Black man or a 16-year-old Black man, and so. In the same way, we treat our children like little adults. So if we see a man having a relationship with a little adult.
I mean, I remember when we were 13 and 14 and 15, it was taken for granted that the girls who are our age were more mature than us as a group, right? And that's true. But does it function that for some of them, they double down on that or they prove that to themselves in their community by dating older men? I'm 15, but I can date a 20-year-old. That proves that I'm more mature than you guys. So then it becomes part of their identity.
It becomes part of their identity. Like when I was in high school and we all wanted to date college boys, like there's a point by sophomore year where everyone's, and I was very lucky that the ones that I would, we might have talked on the phone a few times or walked, hung out, but like there weren't any that really like went there with me. There were men that wanted to, but none of the ones I liked, luckily, were the ones that did. But we kind of had this attitude like, oh, you all are just kids, right? But it's like, when I'm a kid, I might think I'm not a kid, but because I'm 16 and I wear a D cup or whatever, but I'm still very much a kid. The person who's supposed to be the responsible adult in that situation is the grown-up who, like my high school crush who I was in love with, who told me, and he was 4 years older than me. So I'm 16 and he's 20. And we talk on the phone a few times and he's like, you are so sweet and you're really cool, but you're...
Right, sweet, cool, right? Not you're sexy, not you're on my level, not I'm going to date you.
Exactly.
And I think that goes to this. We have this thing.
But the attempt was there. Like we exchanged numbers on some, like it was clear why we were exchanging numbers. But we had, knew to like.
There's this thing.
There's that responsibility.
There's this thing that nobody acknowledges where there's this. When we and when we say, oh, it's okay for a freshman girl to date a senior in high school boyfriend, like that's to me, and especially seeing it in high school, it starts to lowering the rim, right? Because the older guys that'll tell you on the corner, get you a young girl because you can mold it. I don't want to mold nobody. I don't want to mold her. You feel what I'm saying? And so now I've
heard that.
Right. So now you see it in high school, right? And I'm seeing this. I graduated. Well, I was supposed to graduate in 07. I dropped out, whatever. Got my GED sometime after that. But I'm watching it and I'm like, I don't ever want to date down. I want the older girls, right? And that might be a whole nother thing in toxic masculinity. But here I'm like, my aspiration, I'm aspiring up. Why you niggas want to date down? And now look, we 10 years out of high school.
Yeah.
They still dating younger girls.
There's nothing wrong with dating younger women.
Right.
You know,
right.
My father was 10 years older than my mother. I think part of why they had a good long relationship is because they were in different little points and they had a distance and but he was not dating her when she was under 18.
And that's my problem.
Right. That's what we're talking about. And like you could say, well, you know, 22 and 30 is okay, but 16 and 20 is not. Well, yeah. Because she's 16.
I'm going to say that every time. Now that we're talking about a little older, we get to towards the end of the documentary, the last two parts. And
part where R. Kelly's not paying child support, that part?
That was in there too.
Wow.
Now the part,
I'm like, there's just nothing you can do right.
The part that threw me off, the part that began, because I'm 100% on the side, this nigga's a monster. We got to get this nigga out the paint, put a bullet in the head, put him behind jail. Either way, we got to get him off the street, right? And then we're introduced to, I forgot, Asante is her name? She's 35 when she meets R. Kelly.
Right.
And I'm like,
the fan.
Right. Yeah. And I'm like, wait a minute. Why is this a part of the story? And that's definitely why I needed you here. Because I stand on my side that he's wrong. We need to get rid of him. But there's parts that I do not understand, right? The part that I was like, what's this need to be in here for? Because this just sounds like, he already looked like a monster. You don't need extra icing. So please, Jamilah, if you could, because you're not this woman, but if you could explain, how does a 35-year-old be referred to as a survivor?
Because he's abusive. It's not just the age thing. Same way Rihanna and Chris Brown were within a year of each other. You know, it's an abuser and it's an abuser. Now, I mean, there's always the question of, you know, her and Kitty, like, these allegations have been out for a long time. Right. You all were in your 30s when you met him.
And she specifically said, I would have kicked you out of my house if you went against him.
The commonalities,
right?
What she's saying, the toxic relationship,
okay,
right? And it really came home to me when she was like, "I cannot go in that room. I cannot even face to myself the things that we did in that room. I'm so hurt just even being near that space again."
Right? She didn't even open up that door.
Right. So it was deeply painful. So it was very toxic to her. So it's not that there's nothing necessarily illegal in this situation, but his pattern towards women over and over and over is immoral and toxic and disgusting and destroying them.
Right.
You know.
I think that's an important thing to note because when people talk about like, oh, this person's too young for you,
right?
There's oftentimes still the idea that like maybe they treat this person well. You know, that this is a relationship between two people who love each other, or even if it's not a serious relationship, maybe he is polyamorous and there's a lot of girls around, but maybe they're treated well and they're all just having fun. And, you know, like it's, you know, the illusion of Hugh Hefner, because of course the stories that we've heard was that it was not as always as fun and sunshine and gumdrops and mutual orgasms as people were, you know, trained to believe. Right. But like, okay, you know, like that's awful and inappropriate and wrong, but you don't necessarily assume even with predatory behavior, I don't think that most people would have made the assumption that he was abusive to them, you know, and I think that's such an important part of the story that when I was younger, I hadn't considered it. There's still a level of abuse just in, I'm a full grown man, you're a little girl, you don't have the wherewithal to make these decisions.
Absolutely.
But when you talk about the physical violence, when you talk about the cut your hair off and dress this way now, you know, or you don't get a cell phone.
Sexual deviance.
You pee in the corner.
I mean, you know, this is not about creating a legal case against him, you know. So you know, Dream is not a lawyer or a prosecutor building a case, right? She is a journalist telling a story. And there is a story of R. Kelly consistently treating women in his life horribly. Yeah. His wife, his two young girlfriends, his grown age girlfriends, so all of it. If the entire story was he had a bad relationship with this girl when she was 35 and he was 55, you can't make a documentary on that.
Right.
But as part of a pattern of, look at him marrying Leah when she's far too young. Look at him mistreating his wife. Look at him with this girl. Look at him with this girl, 14, 15, 14, 13, 15. Look, you know, now look at what he's doing to the 30-year-old. I mean, it's like, wow. Like, there's a gigantic breadth of women that you have mistreated from across the country, from across different generations. Yeah. Like, Jesus.
So how do we, because it seems like somehow, some way this nigga has.
Why did the streams number go up?
Well, I expected
this? You think that was
I don't.
Just the name.
Number one. It doesn't matter because he signed away his publishing, so he doesn't see.
No, but I'm not even talking about him. I'm not even talking about him profiting.
But that would happen no matter what. That would happen. That was going to happen.
Name recognition.
Yeah, the name recognition. I think there was a bunch of white people who ain't never heard. White people love watching shit, especially when it's about a bad black person. They watch that. So
why isn't MCA? Why hasn't RCA dropped him?
Because I've heard for years that he was effectively done, and there were no plans for a new project.
But then why not?
I think if you,
but then why not? Well, yeah, then why not drop him if we're not even gonna?
I think I think at some point, some PR person somewhere is saying, "Well, if we drop him amidst all this, it looks like we knew about it, and it looks like we're a part of it."
But I mean, he's irrelevant. Musically.
I don't know.
Look at the quality, and the conversation that. It's not the most important conversation. Right. I think the one the community has not had is about how overrated so much of his work is. Like, I don't think we've been completely honest. And as somebody who will acknowledge the moments of genius in the music that he created, that was really beautiful and really special. And I'm not talking about I Believe I Can Fly, because I think that song is lame as hell. But
I think that the kid should be singing Dreams and Nightmare.
There's so many other songs they could sing, but I think that like his overall impact on R&B, his musical legacy is not a positive one, because I think that he helped usher in, and as somebody who loves New Jack Swing and loved that early marriage of hip hop and R&B, like I feel like he ushers in kind of like the worst of hip hop coming into R&B. So like it's so raunchy, and like that's not the beginning of raunch and like sexually overt music and R&B, but the way
it's really the child of New Jack Swing. It's traditional R&B.
It's more traditional.
No. But listen, I'm saying there's a difference, because yes, there's been sexually explicit R&B music before, but the terms in which we're describing it, like the Jeep analogy, like it just gets so cheesy and so. Historically, R&B music sounded like raunchy, sexy R&B still sounded like an act between two people that has a certain level of respect for one another. Whether it was,
I think that's
it's me and Mrs. Jones having an affair or not.
Sure.
You don't sound like, hey, bitch, I took you home from the club tonight. I'm going to bend you over and then send you home in a cab.
Right.
And like he kind of like helps. Like I just feel like the way that he's speaking to the women, it's not always seems like you're ready. You know, it's two gorillas in the jungle making love, and you know, like it just feels like these are songs about somebody I'm fucking tonight. And I'm not saying that it's somebody who has a problem with casual sex, but like the way that it's presented, it's just, you know, and the lyrical quality for me was just really, really bad. The production,
voice.
There's a lot of more stuff that sounds like Best of Both Worlds to me than
right.
I think for me.
I think it's the voice.
Very pop.
This was never my cup of tea, and even in modern R&B, he's too pop.
What we can never argue. And that's what I love about this platform. It's a place where we can have all parts of the conversation, right? So I think it was the voice. I think, and that even answers my question that I was even going to ask you. Like, what was it that just makes him so immovable? It's the voice. I think it's the
writing. I think it's the songwriting to be able to create.
Anybody else could have wrote that song. Anybody else could have sung that song.
No.
And it would have been a hit, but it wouldn't last as long. It's that voice. That is a voice that you would only hear in the church. That's a voice you hear in your life.
You
see what I'm saying?
He's definitely from the church.
And he takes
musically.
He takes big.
I can see that
church. He takes
and as somebody who was not raised in the church, like that has no like it's familiar to me, by proxy, but it doesn't touch my heart at all. So I'm like.
Even when he was able to do I Believe I Can Fly, it's because he took those big church runs. But my biggest question, because I don't want to keep you guys too much longer, how do we prevent another R. Kelly? How do we hold, and I'm only talking to black men because that's the community I'm in. I do not care, and I'm saying it, yes, I do not care what white people do in a white community. Because that don't affect me. I ain't got shit to do with me.
Well, I'll say I don't want them to abuse their children, but they're not the standard. I think that's what we should say. They're not the barometer of morality.
Right, and it's at this point.
Their lives do affect us, but I appreciate the notion to be black-centric.
Because I'm worried about what's going to change my community, right? What's going to... what does that look like? What does accountability in the community look like to prevent another R. Kelly, another 30 years worth? Because at this point, he has a legacy of abuse, no?
I think the world has changed so much from when he married Aaliyah and when he was prowling around Kenwood that it would be difficult, not impossible, but difficult for somebody to ride out those things like that because of the likelihood of videotape. You know, because somebody in real time is tweeting.
He already was on videotape.
But there was, But I think now...
But
we experienced
I thought you were going to talk about the virality and the intensity of information flow in social media era.
But I think that protected him a lot.
Even with yes, there was tape, but and yes, the internet existed and a lot of people accessed it, especially a few years later, during the trial at that point, people are Googling it, right?
Sure.
But we weren't able to react to it together on the internet. So you're watching it by yourself, you're watching it by you're not sure. You think it's weird. You don't want to, but you don't want to be the one who calls it out that makes you uncomfortable. You think it's weird too, but we both niggas and they're like, yo, he pissed on her. But maybe deep inside you're like, oh my God, she looks like my little sister, Right. Social capital's always meant more to you guys than women. But I think that the ability to just disseminate and because again, we're not just talking about a guy who likes young girls.
That's right. They're all wrapped up together.
They are, absolutely. All this wraps together. And so it's like you have all the other details that made him so much more of a monster than we knew. It'd be hard to keep that stuff away now in real time when somebody's taking a picture of I just saw R. Kelly and his 12-year-old going into, here's my friend 2 years ago with all her hair.
I mean, if you just
she wraps up social capital and women for us, which is very right. So our woman is partly a way to say to the world, look who I got, right? This is what I got, right? I was able to pull a 10, right? Or whatever, right? So when he says YG, right? Young Gunner would be an equal, right? That would be to her, like my honey, my boo. Not talking to her. He's talking to y'all. Look what I got.
Look at my bitch.
I got a young girl. I got my ideal. I got a baby with me. Like, what's up? Like, that's what makes him, that's my 10, right?
So as a man, as an older man in the Black community,
I'm sorry.
He's older.
Older than you.
I'm sorry.
Older than me.
I'm sorry. Can I get a witness? That sentence did not start out right. Can we start
the OG better?
Wait, Mr. Belafonte, please.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes, back in the 20s. Jesus.
So as an OG, as someone as an OG, someone who is tasked with making sure those who come up under him does better.
An OG in hip hop media, Touré. I see your face. He's like, damn,
Jesus Christ,
you're making it worse.
Still.
As an elder,
God damn it, yes. As an old person, almost died. No, as a Black man, with a family who doesn't want to see this happen again. How do we, as men? What are the steps we need to be taking?
I mean, the R. Kelly situation is so much, and part of what we have really gotten into in the last 15 minutes of this conversation, it's not purely about young girls, it's about having toxic relationships with women, right? Because he's having these sorts of toxic relationships.
All across the board.
Right, multi-generationally. We need to learn how to have better relationships with women.
Yeah.
We have men, and not just Black men, men have goals around fatherhood, right? I'm going to be a better father than my dad.
Right.
Or, in my case, I'm going to try to be as good a dad as my dad, right? How many men say, I'm going to be a better husband than my father was?
Not many.
Who says that? I don't think we approach marriage and our relationships with goals the way we approach fatherhood and career, right? With goals. And that needs to be part of the picture of being a man. And I mean, it is, for me, in terms of like the longevity of your relationship, says something, along with the hotness of your wife. I like walking in the room as my wife. She's hot and skinny. Check it out. Here we go. Hair is long. She looks good. Give it up. Heels are high. What's really good? Yes, give me my social capital. But I mean, the importance of relationship has to be important to us,
right.
And not just treating them any kind of crazy way. Because that's what he's really doing. He's finding young girls who he can treat crazy and won't say anything. And the few older women, 35 plus, who he can treat crazy. Like most of them he can't, but he'll find the ones he can.
I'm going to be 35 this year, so let's not call those older women. Let's just say.
Well, I meant just older than the women I was previously talking about.
6 months, right? When's your birthday?
Oh, listen, I've been acting like this the whole year. My mom's been saying I'm almost 30 for 2 years. I'm like, ma'am, I'm 29. Let me get that off.
Mom, ma'am?
Only when she said stuff like that. I'm like, yo, ma'am, like.
Oh my God! Yeah, I thought you said man. I thought it was all
That's how you call her. No,
ma'am.
That's how you call her out. Her name. You say ma'am.
I'd be like, ma'am. I would never say her real name. I'd be like, ma'am. I'm 29. Respect it, please. Okay, I was born 8. But I want to ask you, because this has been a question that I was even scared to ask anyone in public.
Ooh.
Is there ever a point? Because the TMZ video that just dropped today, I think it's of a performance from like last night or recently, and you see these girls.
I didn't see the date on it. Are we sure? Because
I'm not sure. That's why I said possibly.
I thought Joycelyn was back with her.
No, it was Dominique.
I thought Dominique was back with Joycelyn's absolutely not with her. But I thought Dominique was back with the parents, but she's in that video.
And she's in this video, and then there's Azrael, and then there's Jocelyn. I'm like, is there ever a point where we stop fighting for the ones that keep going back?
No, because they're abused. You know, I wouldn't care if those girls are 40 years old. You know, they're in the same way that one thing I took away from this series that I didn't really expect was, one, I acknowledged this years ago, as much as I always was like, I would have never, as I got a little bit older, I'm like, if I were that age and I think about who was I attracted to at the point when I'm 14, 15. So like if Common or Q-Tip or how come I'll still what?
Wow.
No, I'm just kidding. But
this is the podcast, shoot shot.
But if it were Common or Q-Tip or Maxwell or somebody that I thought was hot, I absolutely would have given that man my number. And I don't know how far I would have gone. You know what I mean? Like we would have gone out. Like once he starts telling me to call him daddy and trying to change up my clothing, I don't know. You know what I mean? I can't tell you because when I was 14, I was 14, right? Like I wasn't fully developed yet. But watching the documentary, I realized how much more susceptible to abusive behavior I may be as an adult than I would have realized.
Susceptible? How willing you are?
It's not susceptible. How vulnerable. I've had a little
even
bit of
now,
drink.
really?
I was on a date earlier. Listen, I was like, where I saw where somebody could tap into certain insecurities and not full out isolate me from my family. I have a mother, so there are things that are just not going to happen, right? But like I could see where just some of the ways that he would get in their heads and just some, that it would not be impossible to do that to a smart, accomplished, confident person. Like it's just not impossible. And we see this happening all the time. Right. Think about how many female celebrities have had to give up half of their everything in a divorce, to somebody who, Nina Simone, Mary J. Blige, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Britney.
Right. Like who just like these men that are like, how did you get her in the first place? And it seems like you had a hold on her. You weren't treating her too good. Right. And these relationships went on for a long time. So this isn't something that abuse is not limited to teenage girls at all, which is why I have to make peace with two women that I'm like, what the hell are you calling R. Kelly? You didn't know who R. Kelly was when you gave him your phone number? Right. Like as much as I want to say, it still can't be that's what you get. That's what you get if I tell you not to eat a whole pizza before bed and you get a stomach ache. You don't get that's what you get for getting your ass beat by your boyfriend.
Eating is so fundamental, right? And when you get hungry, you just start...
You don't feel good.
You don't feel good. You start just going for the food. Like it's like precognitive. Right. I just must. And like when he tell you no, you can't eat, I'm just like,
that's some sick.
How you not just like no?
I'm not gonna.
You're saying like how did those instincts not get? Because
I'm not gonna hold you. As much as women like to eat,
this is somebody who's physically. How much the body requires nourishment.
Yes,
but even with that, this is somebody who's physically intimidating, and has made you feel that nobody loves you like I do, nobody cares about you like I do. I'm gonna make you a star.
And the worship of celebrity in this culture, which would think he is a demigod, and the evidence is the music.
Right.
He can't read.
Right.
I mean, all you really have to do is get on TV and people think you're a celebrity.
I mean, can we talk about that?
That's really all you have to do. Like, you don't have to do anything of substance.
I'm sure you both have had to deal with people thinking you got a whole lot more money and a whole lot more power than you do because people saw you on television.
I was in the crowd at the BET Awards, and everybody from my neighborhood was like, "Oh, you made it!" I'm in the crowd. I didn't get a credit.
It's like, and you probably
you just see me in the crowd.
You're probably too young to remember this, but the Calvin commercial from McDonald's, right? Like Calvin's young.
Calvin got a job.
Calvin's the manager of McDonald's. Calvin, I heard you bought McDonald's. Like, that's how we treat celebrities. You know what I mean? That's how we treat success.
Right.
Like,
so let you be somebody that sung "Step in the Name of Love." We're talking completely different here. Yeah. Now, Jamilah,
which is wild to me.
You deal with a lot of scrutiny. There is no shortage of black men attempting to tear you down for you simply being honest.
Yeah.
Now you do the documentary, you do all this work that is helping women, helping black women, and you're still being attacked, still being torn down. How do you even still operate on social media?
I mean, this is probably my addiction. There's surely something wrong with me that I have not let it go. But I mean, I think I've always recognized it as an important tool for, communicating certain ideas. I mean, it has created my career in so many ways, right? So there's that, and allowed me to do things that I would not have ever had access to, were it not for Twitter specifically. But it's also like, for all the negative engagement and the harassment, it's like I've watched you grow up in certain ways. You know what I mean? I've watched people evolve. I've watched these it's harder. I think we've gotten to a point where it's harder than ever to really have the dialogues on social media. It's more like, are you willing to be preached to?
Twitter's changed.
It's changed,
It used to be much more communal and much more interesting. What, like 4 to 5 years ago?
Absolutely.
I think the change predates Trump and the frogs.
Way by far.
It used to be so much more communal.
We were talking
fun.
to each other, not at each other.
Yeah.
And I think now, and as somebody who gets a lot of harassment on there, I know I'm guilty of doing more, just kind of like I'm sharing ideas, things that I wanted to say, less interested in a dialogue. Like, I may respond to people that say nice things, or, but it's also, that's kind of like a level of protection, kind of like, I don't want to be called out of my name, or I don't want to deal with this kind of, mistreatment today. But it ultimately, like, I'm tough enough to deal. Like, I don't take these things personally. There have been days where it's hurt. There have been days where I've been near tears, not because someone triggered something in me or spoke to something, that I feel insecure about. Like, I've never cared about things that people said about my looks. I've never cared about things that people said about, like, if they tried to talk about my job or I worked, or, even me being a single parent. What always has hurt me is the intention behind it, right? Like, why is there so much vitriol? Like, people have talked about my family. Well, there's been some crazy things said about my family that I don't really want to get into, but specifically around, like, me being a single mom. Like, I've had multiple people say to me, "This is why your child's father left when you were 5 months pregnant." Now, that did not happen.
All right, I was about to say, like, how did they know?
That did not. That's the crazy thing to me. That did not happen.
I'm sorry to hear that, though. That's crazy.
So, but if it had, you know what I mean?
What is the point of you saying it?
If it had, what have I done to warrant you wanting to invoke what would certainly be the most traumatic experience in a person's life if they were abandoned by the father of their child in the 5th month of their pregnancy? And if with that, there would be kind of insinuations that, like, we weren't good and we didn't get along. My ex and I have a fabulous relationship. We're friends, like we're great. We're like model co-parents. And so that's why when people say those things, I'm like, it's okay. Like, that doesn't hurt me because everything is good. But, like, what hurts is that there is a woman who's having that experience, who doesn't have somebody to do this very hard work with her, who doesn't, who may still be in love with her former partner, who's hurting. And you're saying this is to somebody because you don't agree with what they say on Twitter.
Politics.
Like that, you don't agree with their politics. Like, you would want to hurt somebody in that way. And so, like, that for me, again, I can understand being polarizing. I can understand someone being offended by certain things, but I'm like, but the things I'm talking about should not be controversial. It's like, don't rape, pay women, treat us with respect.
But you know, there's a study that I continuously come back to in my attempt to try to understand this sort of stuff. It was out of a group at Harvard, and the name of the study was "White People See Race as a Zero-Sum Game They Are Losing." And when you put it in that context, like, well, diversity is just like, hey, can we just be on an even playing field? Wow, an even playing field means I'm losing.
Right. Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, men are experiencing it the same way. That we have had the whole of the pie for so long, and giving you one more inch is us losing.
Yep.
So
that's a brilliant.
So you're like, hey, I'm just asking for equality.
Right.
Like, wow, that's a lot.
Right.
Because we haven't had to give that up.
Right. And then when we're talking specifically about Black men, these are men that are like, I am disenfranchised. I am abused at the hands of the system. You know, there are things that are unfair and unjust to me in this world in a very profound way. How could you ever suggest that I could be oppressive? You know, like just not being willing to accept that you can be both and.
Right. Two things could be true.
You know, and that even in naming that does not mean saying, so as a result of me having an issue with patriarchy, how it functions in the Black community, I don't like Black men. I don't date them. I don't want them around me. I don't fuck with them. If I had a son, I'll give him away. It's like, no. It's like,
I had a son, I'll give him away.
I'm like, if
I
that
told
were...
my father, fuck off.
Right. You know, it's like, right, I can stop calling my face. Like, if that were somebody's approach, then most certainly I understand why they would be treated the way that I get treated. Right. But I'm like, I've never dated a non-Black man. I've certainly dated a lot of it. I actively date. I'm not at home like I hate the patriarchy so much.
Never dated a non-Black man?
Never dated.
Would you?
Man. I don't.
No,
you're
not
interested. I'm just not. No. I'm not interested. No. I think when I was younger, it was political, and now that I'm older, it's just a matter of preference. It's just like I've yet to come across somebody who did it for me.
Just don't do it.
You know, and I just silly me. It's like, what are my addictions? Like, you know, I managed to avoid getting too hooked on cigarettes. I'm moderate with my drinking, but Black men and Twitter, like
that's the addiction.
Two things I should probably give up and will not.
Jesus Christ!
but they've also been very good.
Now I'd be remiss if I did not ask you this. With all we talk about with holding people accountable, we always tell Black men to tell your friends, be accountable. Be accountable. If you're doing some fucked up shit, stop doing fucked up shit. Don't let that shit pass.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, with all your work that you've done to in the community, defending women, because even right now I'm
a writer and a cultural commentator. I don't want to overstate it, and I'm not trying to make myself small, but I don't want people to like. I'm doing what I wish that I would. What I'm doing, what I would like to believe a lot more people would if they had the opportunity to speak to a lot of people at one time.
So in doing that, because I didn't even know what was going on until you were on the documentary, and you know when you came on that documentary, everything they're pulling everything, and then they brought up your relationship or your friendship with the creator of Bourbon Ball, who was accused earlier last year of sexual misconduct with women. Accused. So
Bourbon Ball was, I see Touré's face like, what? It was a party. It was like a party, like a traveling party, like a trap karaoke.
Right. So with your relationship to him, how has that changed?
I mean, for me, this was a person who I met exactly 3 times, you know, like I did not know him. And so it pissed me off. So basically, like, you know, there were some tweets that I saw that had hundreds of retweets, you know, saying like, oh, she's on here talking shit about R. Kelly, but she was friends with this guy. So this guy, you know, like I was in town once when he was throwing a party in Atlanta, like, you know, through Twitter. I ran into him at another party, a trap karaoke, and he was like, oh, well, you're here. I was speaking at Emory or something, like. And he said, oh, well, you're here. I'll give you a couple tickets to the ball tomorrow. You know, it was like you had to dress up thing. I was like, oh, okay. I went to Macy's, got a little $50 dress and stayed for a few minutes.
Big bowling.
Oh, yeah.
Big bowling.
Little
$50 for 15 minutes. Let's go. Let's go.
The red number from the clearance section. It was a nice dress. I really liked the dress. So I was like, no matter what happens tonight, I got a really cheap dress that I liked that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And so, like, I went, I think maybe... No, I wasn't dating no boy at the time. Like, some of my friends were there. Some people I knew were there. I went, stayed for a little bit, had a nice time, and, you know, and left. And saw him. We did I was working for a publication last year. I did a video where I talked to large Black men about weight You know, it was a conversation I'd never heard. We talk a lot about Black women and weight or women and weight. We don't talk about men and weight and how it affects their identity and sex and clothes and all that. And so this person's a big guy, and has a big personality. And I thought he'd be great for this dialogue. And so I featured him in that. And he was doing another one of his parties in New York that I think soon thereafter. So after the shoot, my boyfriend at the time and he went and had a drink at the venue where he was throwing his party and just talked to him. That's the extent of this relationship. You know, there weren't many DMs. Like, there was no phone numbers. I wouldn't know his last name. Like, this is not somebody I would have had around my kid. Like, I didn't know him like that, you know? And so, but I'd been nice to him. Like, we had exchanges on Twitter, and I'd went to one of his parties and had him in this video. I don't even know if people even knew about the video. You know what I mean? It was just that we were cool on Twitter.
That was a nice little stunt. They seen the videos. Hundreds of thousands of people seen that. That was a good video.
Thank you.
That was a good video. But I felt bad for calling some of my fat friends fat after seeing that video.
You should have. You should have. It was a good video.
But then I realized.
Anyway, so I did not know this person. And so the fact that this wasn't the first time that, like, when myself and other women who'd interacted with him online, some who actually, you know, seemed to have been his friends offline, and some who were just kind of like nice to him on the internet, were then like one when the shit happened, and like basically these women came on Twitter and said he groped me, he, you know, kind of tried to force himself on me, like bad stuff, you know. People pointed to us like, oh, you call us the misogynists, oh, we're the sexists, we're the danger, but you're co-signing this person. But it's like, we didn't know. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like there's the inclination to point fingers at it was disingenuous. Like, they did not care about the women.
Co-signing him? Like, are you riding for him? Are you out on TV?
Never.
Like, and that's no. And it's you know, it's almost like the Trumpian playbook of just say back to the other person, you call misogyny, I call you misogynist. Like,
literally.
Well, how do you do that? Well, you were palling around, right, with a terrorist in Chicago, right? No, you were palling around with. I mean, like, he's not like, it's not like you were like working for this man and you're like riding for his organization
and all of these, none of these women.
And you're saying what?
And if that weren't bad enough, none of the women who like they've called out for this, and I've tried to look away from it, like, okay, there's a lot of nonsense on Twitter. I have a lot of people muted. I can look at these other things that are going on, like such as actually monitoring what's going on with Trump, you know, but. None of the women who, you know, I saw people going and defended him. Everybody, from the moment that shit came out, people were like, I'm sorry that this happened. I'm sorry if I made you feel comfortable with him in your presence because, you know, you saw me interact with him and I made him seem like a good guy. I hadn't seen anything like that. That's it. And so for these men, like a year later, these girls, ostensibly, and I didn't know who they were, the accusers, they're probably still on Twitter, you know, so to have had this traumatic experience used as fodder to discredit somebody, it's so disgusting. It's sad. So it's like what you were saying about the personal stuff. It just makes me sad that someone would want to do that.
The other thing I was remembering is that when I finished my interview with Dream, you were walking in. Mm-hmm. It was the same day.
It was.
We were back to back.
It was.
But this piece is reflective of what Dream has been doing in media for a long time.
Right.
And it is completely her fingerprints in terms of the sort of journalism she's been telling, the sort of stories she's been telling. From, you know, the empty chair at the beginning, which was so powerful to me, to the very conscious choice to not overplay Aaliyah's story within this larger story because Aaliyah's famous. No, Aaliyah is a woman just like the rest of them, and she's going to weight all the stories equally to reach way back into his past, to create something that is overtly feminist. So, like, Tarana Burke is part of the story. I mean, you know, it was just really beautifully shot and told, and I mean, you know, it's extraordinary. I mean, I feel like, you know, it's my sister who I grew up with as a writer in New York, and her, you know, and to also to extent Cheo Coker and Mimi Valdez, moving to a visual realm and doing really powerful things. It's amazing.
I have to say, as someone who grew up reading you all, you know, and not because you're an older person, but because you all were just so young.
She's making fun of you now.
I know.
But I'm just like, but you all were so young, and in journalist years, it's like, no, that's not that young. But when you just think of kind of like being culture shifters, you know, it's not just like we're kids writing for magazines after we get out of college. It's like, no, we're defining this new thing that's happening. Like, we're explaining it to the world. So, like, there was something kind of surreal because now, so you were leaving when I came in, and
leaving which one?
The
documentary.
Literally,
right? We passed each other, and I want to say, who was the other person who was there? Like, there was someone else that I grew up, reading and Miss Info, and so it's just kind of like, wow, like, these are people that I, and some of you are really only 4 or 5 years older. It's not this big age difference, right? But just kind of like when you all hit the ground running and when you're doing this work. So to be a part of one, it's not the first time I've shared space with these people and maybe been in the same project or a podcast or a panel or something. But like the taking down of R. Kelly, the guy from my hometown, the person that, like, this thing that I wanted to see happen for so long. And you all also being the group that was holding him accountable, that was writing these stories, that was reporting on it. It was in Vibe, it was on MTV News. Like, it was not absent, right? But like to now be in this moment with Dream Hampton at the helm of it was really surreal. I'm just so grateful for it. I'm so grateful for it. And I really hope that it will destroy him in certain ways. If this is not the eradication of him, there are pieces. There are pieces that are broken.
I wonder where we get into a similar calculus that we see in politics, where us over here in the MSNBC progressive crowd beat up on Trump, and then we stop after a while and remember the other side's not listening. Over on Fox, that speech was amazing. Yeah. It's the Democrats who are not coming to the table. Right. That's the message you're getting over on Fox.
So he certainly has his Fox News. Like, you see them on Facebook, you see them on Twitter.
Is anybody coming to
But there were a lot of moderates. There were a lot of CNN viewers, in our community that kind of like halfway.
But is the R. Kelly audience coming to Dream's piece with an open mind and walking away going, wow, you have changed my mind. I can no longer listen to him.
It's not the diehards, but it's the moderates. But the moderates were still going to go to the Tom Joyner cruise if he's on there. You know what I mean? As opposed to saying, I'm not going. You know what I mean? They would not have a problem with him performing at the Soul Train Awards or at the BET Awards.
Sure. Would he even champion it?
But
would he even champion it?
They'd be like, oh, well, he's the best person to sing that song. Like, oh, he's kind of a creep. Maybe I wouldn't buy tickets to his show. And I've known people that would buy tickets to the show and didn't think that they were really supporting this terrible. You know what I mean? Like, they weren't able. Now this is like, it's hard to hear those songs without thinking about these things now. Like, that is going to change how people experience his music.
People bought tickets to Bill Cosby's last tour.
And on that note,
there were still people who wanted to sign up for that ride. Like,
and on that note.
But not as many people. And I think that's a little, not as many people. And I also think that there was something to, and I'm not defending buying it, because it's still a vote with your dollar. But there was some curiosity about, like, well, what is he going to say about this? Like, am I going to get the video? Like,
I'm 100% sure that I could sit here and talk with you guys for 5 more hours.
All right, great. Let's do it.
But the way the studio.
All right. My children are going to wake up, but fuck it, Mouse. Let's go.
But please, Touré, number one, thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you for inspiring me. Thank you for making it very real.
Tell them about my podcast.
I got this. I'm somewhat professional.
Okay, thank you.
Now, because you didn't tell me to do it, and I was already going to do it. Your podcast, The Touré Show.
No, it's Touré Show.
Touré Show. No the.
Like Chappelle's show.
Okay. Your podcast, Touré Show.
Yes, sir.
Tell the people where they can find that, where they can listen to that, what they will get if they dive in.
It's an hour-long one-on-one with a successful Black person.
Oh, that's why I ain't been invited yet.
They're all older people. They're older people.
You can find it on
older successful.
You can find it on all podcast platforms. We're going to start airing on Brick starting on the 17th.
Dope.
And that'll be on the YouTubes as well. Got a crazy month coming up. We got Malcolm Gladwell,
nice,
Lil Yachty, Benga Akanebe from To Kill a Mockingbird,
nice.
Terry Crews,
nice.
Rosie Perez, Sonia Sanchez. So that's just like the next month and a half.
That's fine.
And again, we got Joe Morton coming up from Scandal. So, we got, crazy people coming up.
Papa Pope, man. Papa Pope.
I just want to sit
if he doesn't
with
talk
awesome people and talk about how do you do your thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, Joe Morton, how do you act? Like, just how do you know? Ask Tony Braxton. How do you sing a song? Yeah. How do you practice singing? Right? These are not the questions that you would have asked when I asked when I'm doing the Rolling Stone profile. That's not the stuff we talked about. Yeah. Now I'm like,
this is a nuts
Lil Yachty, how do you write a rhyme? You know? Yeah. So yeah, it's going good.
Well, what else do you have coming? Where can the people find you so they can see all the other good stuff you got coming out?
I'm working on Rakim's memoir. Been working on
God
it for
MC.
4 years.
God MC A.
We're almost done. Getting there.
I'm ready. Just let me know.
One of the things that I learned the other day, you know what Eric was doing before they met? He was on the first street team, right? WBLS, they didn't call it a street team then. Mm-hmm. They called it a mobile DJ, where he would drive around the tri-state area, right? So that's how he came to meet Rakim, because he was in Wine Dance all the time.
I see y'all 11798. I see
when they made the first record, and back in the day, you made one record. They didn't have any money, so they made Eric B. as the president. The B-side was My Melody, and I'm like, how did y'all get it out? Because there would be like 2 stations in New York that might play it, like one. But because Eric was a mobile DJ and knew all the DJs, not only in the tri-state, but on the East Coast, he just went to all his friends and was like, please play my record. And most of them said yes. So suddenly the record is playing up and down the East Coast. They're doing shows up and down the East Coast. And that's when it starts to kick in. Okay, let's do an album. But they still weren't even thinking about it as a they made an album not thinking, well, let's make an album to be big stars. And MTV was not playing rap videos at that time. It was still like a serious hobby. Yeah. Like, and then like a year later, it's like, and then we made $1 million. And I realized this is not a serious hobby.
Well,
but that's what it was until like the last second.
I definitely have to have you on when that's coming out. Because, like I said, God MC A. And literally 2 blocks from where I grew up. Literally.
You grew up in Wine Dance?
I grew up in North Babylon, a block away from Wine Dance. Literally, the street over is the street that separates Coming Back. That's the street that separates Wine Dance from North Babylon. Literally could walk to Rakim's house in 2 minutes. So to know that that's coming out, you got to come up here and talk about that.
All right.
Miss Jamilah Lemieux.
I am doing a few things, nothing too exciting to promote. I've got my head down working on a book about Black women.
That's always fun.
This year or next year?
It's going out to publishing companies from my agent this year. So this is the book proposal that had to leave my job. This is why I don't have a 9-to-5 anymore. I was like, I was not going to be able to work and write all at once. So I'm doing communications consulting. I've got a few clients, and I'll get back freelancing once I get this book proposal off. But I'm excited about it. My agent's excited.
Wow.
And I want to start a podcast, so I need you guys to Reggie told, you know what? I have so much guilt about like not having started one, when Reggie was around. I remember him saying, like, when you're ready, let's do it, let's talk. He's like, but the days of having a podcast based on your personality are done. You need something niche.
Concept,
right? You have to have concept. And that was what hung me up. And I struggled so much and never wanted to sit down and with anyone and just be like, hey, help me figure out a concept. I felt like I had to do it. Like I've always felt like I had to be the show, the party in the hotel. The show, the after party in the hotel in my career. Like everything I'm figuring it out on my own. And
great Jodeci album. Underrated Jodeci album, just saying.
Not underrated.
Yeah. We don't have to look.
A little underrated. Not underrated. A little underrated to the masses.
Nigga, I was here when it came out. You weren't even in Virginia cutting heads. I tell you, for real, I was with Jodeci in L.A. for the New York Times.
Right.
Devontae was leaning out the window saying homophobic shit to other people who were clearly gay. And I'm like, Money, what are you doing? What are you doing? He offered to buy me a fucking tattoo. Anything you want. He already had sleeves and was like, we go to the parlor again. Let's go. I'll get you. I couldn't think of anything that I wanted to have permanently on my shit.
No, very few groups were ever as doomed, obviously doomed as Jodeci. They were not gonna. I love Jodeci. I loved it. They were not gonna be. 20
it was one guy. It was one guy, right? I mean, Casey and JoJo, fantastic. Casey, amazing singer, right? Like I love his voice much more than Robert's voice to me.
I'll take that.
Definitely.
But it was all
Definitely.
the musical genius. As long as he was there to make the music and define the shit, then they were gonna rock. As long as soon as he lost his mind, they had nothing.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
But they combined hip hop and R&B in an organic way.
It felt real. It felt real. Like R. Kelly was like Malibu's most wanted. Like he was a fake tough guy, and the documentary confirms that, right? Like he never felt like he was really a street dude. He felt like he was a nerd who had a little clout.
Well, I thank the both of you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
This episode means a lot to me because, like I said, I've been trying to get individually both of you on the show for a while, so I'm glad I was able to have it happen for this reason. And I just loved that the fact the conversation was well-rounded.
I'm sorry. I have one more thing.
Yes.
I just want to tag on because you said Jack told you to podcast. Mm-hmm. He came to my office at MSNBC and told me to podcast. Wow. I was trying to get in the radio.
And you did it.
And he was like, you need to podcast. I'm like, nigga, I want people to hear me. I want to do a podcast for 10 people. Like, what are you talking about? And he kept saying, yo, no, podcasting. And that was the first time that I was like, all right, let me see what this is about. Because I wasn't even really checking for it at that time.
Yeah.
OG Reg had the vision. Always had the vision.
It's created so much for so many people. It was really beautiful to watch that continues.
But listen, I just hope that we here at the Clubhouse with Mouse Jones are making them proud. We got Mena out of retirement, which was something I wanted to do. So, like I said, thank you guys for coming. And one more time for anyone dealing with any type of sexual assault, please feel free to call 1-800-656-4673. That's 1-800-656-4673, the National Sexual Assault Hotline. And if you've been made to feel any sort of kind of way during the recording of a faith-based, Christian-based, educational, inspirational podcast, well, get the fuck over it. It's the Clubhouse Podcast with Mouse Jones. Pussy.